Me 24F with my ex 27M of 4 years ago. I think he broke into my apartment and set up a camera. Am I being crazy? Trigger warning. Domestic abuse, violence against a pregnant woman, stalking, religious abuse, harassment. I 24F met my ex 27M 7 years ago, and we dated for about 1 year and I ended up pregnant. He is a Jehovah's Witness and I was raised in this but was never baptized, thankfully. When I ended up pregnant I was told that I had to marry him if I wanted to be in good standing at the Kingdom Hall Church. I agreed and decided not to listen to my parents when they begged me to take my time and make that decision later. Of course this meant staying and living with my parents, and as a brainwashed 18 years old I thought he was the best thing that's ever happened to me and he couldn't do me wrong because he was a Jehovah's Witness and they can't do no wrong. Boy was I wrong. While pregnant he would emotionally and physically abuse me, to the point where my son was premature and I fell into postpartum depression. When my son was 8 months old I decided I had enough, and I needed to put my feelings and love I had for this man aside and make the right decision for my son. I left him. I left the religion. I don't know how I did it, but to this day I thank my son for giving me the strength and love to get past it. Fast forward about 5 years. I am doing great. I have an amazing career. Great car. I live on my own with my son. We have everything we need. I recently began my first relationship and he's amazing. My ex and I actually have a pretty cordial co-parenting relationship. He seems to have matured a lot and is now in a relationship. I get along great with his GF and my son likes her. He recently decided to move 2 doors next to my place. I didn't really mind this as we don't fight or hate each other. I actually saw this as a good thing since he will be closer to our son and can be more involved in school. Last week I walked into my apartment and someone had broken in, but they didn't take anything at all. A few things were moved around. Seemed like they were looking for something and gave up. The first thing that popped into my head was my son's father. I have been living here for years and never had any issues. I actually live in front of the police station, so unless you go in through the back they would see everything. I filed a police report and left it at that. Now this is where it gets weird and my suspicion is proving itself to be right. I dropped off my son at his house 3 days ago, and he mentioned how I shouldn't allow our son to have certain toys because they are violent action figures, Power Rangers. There is no way he would know this. Since he is a JW, I don't like disrespecting his beliefs, so I make sure that my son does not bring those toys to his house. When I asked him how he knew about it, he turned pale. He didn't know what to say and finally said that my son mentioned it. Okay, so maybe my son would have told him. But maybe he didn't. To add to my suspicion, 2 days ago I dropped my son off in the AM, and he slipped and told me that I need to shower my son every day because last night I didn't. There is no way my son could have told him. He didn't speak to him and it was literally the morning after. Also, I shower my son every day, but he had swim class and we got home late, so I figured he was okay to skip. I know it sounds lazy, but I'm sure we've all had those days. Am I being paranoid? I hate feeling like I don't have privacy in my own home. Should I ask him? Is there a way I can check myself? I've tried looking, but nothing I see that shows me there could be a camera. Relevant comments. OP added in the comments as a reply to a commenter. I did not know he was moving 2 doors down. He told me when he signed the lease, and at that point I tried to look at the bright side of things. I now see that there is no bright side in this situation. I hate the feeling of walking out my door and knowing he can see what time I am home and what time I get back by just seeing if my car is in my driveway. I agree that the religion he is teaching my son is not good in any way. But there's not much the law will do besides give me full rights to his medical decisions, which I have. When he is with his dad he goes to his church, but when he is with me he knows we don't do any of that stuff. Once my son is at a certain age he will be able to make the right decision, and I will always steer him the right way. Make him ask questions and do his research first, then come to a conclusion. We have shared custody, but I make the decisions on medical. I tried taking custody, but unfortunately I lost the case. The abuse is documented. I lifted the restraining order after 2 years that we divorced. We would pick up and drop off at the police station, and after 2 years I had to take the next step in trusting that the past was just that. I did not want my son asking me why he gets dropped off at a police station parking lot. I did see a therapist. Mostly for the way that the religion had a hold of me. I also was suffering from postpartum depression, so a whole lot of things were discussed. I don't think I was ever able to recover. It was so bad that my mind physiologically blocked my memories of those years, which is something my therapist warned me about. Although it's good that I don't recall certain things, it also makes me vulnerable, just like it did in this situation. Certain things definitely trigger it, like certain songs or going back to that town. I should also mention that my son's father was diagnosed with bipolar. I would not be shocked if I had a camera in my apartment. I am gathering all the advice on this thread and will have to tactfully make a plan so that I can look for it without seeming like I am. Comment. I'm a former JW too. Do you think it's possible that he's trying to figure out if you're sleeping with your boyfriend, and that your ex is therefore biblically free to remarry? Oopie. We divorced already. The elders told him not to sign it because that means that he can't remarry. I took it to court, and after showing the court all my police reports and pictures of abuse, they consented the divorce. I do see your point. On his end, he is not free to remarry. This could be why he is doing this. Although he is SOL because I do not have my BF to stay over. I will always go to his place when he is with his father, especially now that he lives so close. It's weird. Update. I have been lurking in the sub for the past week, and I am so happy I found this. I really wish I would have known about this years ago when I left the congregation. It would have made the pain less and the loneliness not as bad. When I left the organization, I had no friends and no encouragement that I almost convinced myself multiple times to go back, but I was able to get through it. I wanted to share my story with you, but before I'll give a little background on my past. I pretty much grew up as a witness and I never got baptized. I met my son's father when I was about 18 and I ended up pregnant a couple months after that. The elders pretty much forced marriage on me. As soon as we moved in together, he was abusive. It was horrible. He would physically abuse me knowing I was pregnant with his son. It got so bad that I would literally urinate myself because of how scared I was of him. The last time he laid his hands on me was when I was 6.5 months pregnant. I remember he barged into the bathroom since he knew I was calling the cops. And when he opened the door, he hit my belly and I went straight into the tub. They had to perform an emergency C-section. When I was under anesthesia, he even signed a paper stating I would be refusing blood transfusion, and since he was my husband, it was his decision to make. Thankfully, I had great doctors and my son and I were healthy and made it through. I remember the elders coming to visit me when I was still in the hospital. I remember them telling me that I needed to work harder and putting Jehovah first in our marriage because without him our marriage would fail. A few months later, I left him and I left the organization. I went to therapy for my postpartum depression and I was able to physiologically block those memories, even though sometimes certain things trigger it and it all comes back. It's insane how the mind works. I have a great relationship with my parents. They never shun me and they always look after my son and I. I know they are brainwashed, but I know deep down my father knows I made the right decision. And after all this mess, I think he's opening his eyes a little. I was at work and when I checked, it was automatically locked. I did receive some good advice there, but it's different when it comes from people who know what you grew up in and know just how much mind control plays a big role on everything when it comes to JW. I also would like some advice on how to handle these elders. They keep calling my parents and begging them to reason with me. I am assuming this is really going to reflect them in a bad light, and we all know how much they hate that. Also, please keep in mind that my parents, although witnesses, have my best interest in mind. My father sat me down and told me no matter what, he will stand by my decision, and he will fully support me going through with these charges. I just wish that they didn't have to receive all this harassment. Update 2. First and foremost, thank you for all your suggestions and messages on what steps I should take. So much has happened these past 7 days, and my life has just turned upside down completely. I will try to explain without making it too long. I will start by last week, Wednesday. After reading all the comments, I decided to purchase a spy finder off Amazon. I figured it would put my mind at ease and I can finally feel comfortable in my own home. I paid for a 2-day delivery and planned out what I would do so that I can use this without being obvious. Since I knew that the only way I could do this was by having my son's father in front of me, I decided to tell him I needed to speak with him regarding a new schedule I would like to follow. Friday, we decided to meet up for ice cream with our son. I gave my BF a spare key so he can go in and see if the spy detector worked. I want to say that our meeting lasted about 40 minutes until I finally got the okay from my BF, and I wrapped up the conversation. When I got into my car, I called my BF, and he told me that I needed to drop my son off at my mom's and head over to my place. I did exactly as he said. When I arrived at my place, I parked and my BF came inside my car and broke the news to me. He told me that the detectors detected something, but it was not clear. It kept showing red in my son's room around the doorknob, but it also showed red on one side of a wall that didn't have anything hanging near it. At this point, I didn't know what to do or say. Maybe this was just a malfunction and there is nothing there. Or maybe there is. I decided that I needed to call the cops. I didn't know if it was going to be the right call, but it was showing a signal in my son's room, And that was enough for me to make that call, even if I sounded silly to the cops. Once the cop showed up, I explained to him the situation. He usually works the morning shift surveillance in my son's school, so I see him every morning. He was very understanding and told me he was calling in a tech that would have the equipment as not all cops carry it. At this point I still did not tell the cops that I thought maybe it was my son's father. I figured once it was confirmed I would let out that part. 10 minutes later, my son's dad walks up my driveway and asks if I am okay. I say yes, and that's when the cop walks up. I think he saw how uncomfortable I was, and tells him only the residents are allowed to be there. He goes to tell the cop that he is my son's father, and the cop starts asking him if he is from the area. As soon as he told him he recently moved 2 houses down, the cop asked him to leave since he was not a resident. Once off the property, the cop starts asking me more questions about my son's father, and that's when I went into full-blown detail. After the conversation, he tells me there's a high chance that he could have placed a camera in my son's room. Once the tech arrived, he scanned the room, and at this point we were told to still wait outside. About 30 minutes later, he asks me to come in and for my BF to stay behind. He proceeds to tell me that there was a camera in my son's room. They found a tiny camera in the doorknob. Not sure if you are familiar with this, but my doorknobs lock from the inside, but on the opposite side there is a little hole where you usually need a flathead screwdriver or a similar looking key to open it. I will take a picture later on to show. He explained to me whoever put in this camera replaced the doorknobs with 2 of the same knobs, meaning that the door no longer has a lock. I never realized this. It was such a small detail that I never realized. I never locked my son's room, so this was not something I would look into. I broke down. I didn't know what to say or what to think. He told me that it was linking through Bluetooth/Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, the camera signal was cut, and he was working on getting some code to see where the signal was coming from. Once they confirmed this, I was given the address, and of course it ended up coming from my ex's address. Not the exact address, but more coordination points. No idea what they refer to, they just told me it's a system they use to track a signal. I was in complete shock. I think part of me thought he would never do this. He would never violate my privacy and our son's privacy by doing this. I thought we had passed this stage. After they broke the news to me, they told me I can press charges if I would like. If this is what I decided to do, they would have to process a warrant for his arrest. It was the hardest decision I had to make, but I told them yes. They explained to me that the best thing for me to do was to stay at a relative's or friend's house until this was resolved, as it can be dangerous for me to be so close to him. I don't understand why they couldn't take him then and there, but I told them I would pack a bag. I decided to stay at my parents' home. It was near my job, and it was a place my son was comfortable staying in. I did not hear from my ex at all Saturday. I know I mentioned in my previous post that my parents or ex are Jehovah's Witness, which plays a big part in this whole story. Sunday night my parents had plans and I stayed behind with my son. I hear a knock on the door. I look, and to my surprise it is 2 elders. I guess you can call them pastors to those not familiar with the terms. These were the same men that would tell me not to call the cops when my ex would get physical. These are also the same men that watched me grow up since I was 3. I decided to open the door and they asked to come in. My brother was in the other room, so I felt a little more at ease speaking with them. As soon as they start taking the Bible out, I tell them I do not feel comfortable with that, and if they have anything to say it will be through a conversation and not through the Bible. They agreed and started explaining to me the consequences my ex is facing in the Kingdom Hall for what he has done. They also told me that my ex was taken down to the station Sunday morning, but that he confessed to them everything on Saturday. To make it short, they begged me to drop the charges and kept telling me to think about my son, to think about how he would feel knowing his dad is facing these charges. They kept saying over and over that Jehovah does not condemn his behavior, and sometimes the organization can work this out within themselves. I told them I would not drop the charges. What he did was violate my privacy, and that I was happy that they would work it out between their religion, but I would work out my end through the law. They proceeded to tell me that they have lawyers that can back up my ex, and that if this is the route I take, I should make sure I am covered as well. They also said the reason he put a camera is because he wants custody of my son, because it's not fair to him to not have eternal life and my ex can save my son. Crazy, right? I don't know what he was trying to find by putting a camera in my son's room, because I have absolutely nothing to hide and my son is very well taken care of. I asked them to leave and they did. When I told my dad about what happened and what they were saying to me, he called one of the elders and pretty much went off on him. I hope it doesn't ruin his rep, since I know this religion means the world to him, but at the same time I also hope maybe this will open his eyes. This is all such a nightmare to me. I don't know what to do. Deep down, I do not want to press charges because he is my son's father. I don't want this to ruin his record or for my son to grow up and find out I placed his dad in jail over this. I also know what it's like to be brainwashed and be under mind control. The other part of me feels like he needs to learn his lesson. He needs to know that you can't simply violate someone's privacy because of your religion. I am not sure what is or will be happening yet. Last I heard he was out on a bail and will have a court date which I will need to appear to as well. At that time I could decide to drop the charges if I wanted to. I also received a court date from the family court and he is going for full custody. He filed about a month ago, so this is something he has been planning. I am hoping this whole thing will work for my benefit, which is another reason why I should not drop the charges, as it will help me in family court. So for now, that's all that has happened. I don't know what steps to take from here and I am sort of taking it day by day. I have found a new place and after talking to my landlord, he is letting me break the lease. I hate that I have to move. I love my apartment and I will be moving to a much smaller place for more money. I wish I didn't have to move, but there is not much else I can do. Relevant comments. Do not drop any charges. My reasoning. Besides all the religious BS, your ex is not rational and is already physically abusive. This is a bad combo. It has been my experience that he will never get better without therapy and or medication, and most likely issues will arise where he won't do or continue treatment even if he started. What are the charges against your ex? Has the DA's office stopped any further investigation? Have you had an opportunity to speak with the investigators in your case? Have they hinted that they have other concerns about him? Law enforcement can be very effective in unearthing things through intimidation. They, however, will not want to be jerked around and expend the effort if they sense you won't follow through. They may intimidate you a little to test your resolve. Hold fast to what you decide. All the data he was gathering about you to perhaps further his custody case has been made null and void and is inadmissible because it was garnered from a criminal act and will not be allowed to be presented. His illegal actions will also be used against him. All that goes away if you don't press charges. If you have not contacted a local agency concerning spousal abuse, regardless of marriage status, they will help you or direct you to help. They have experience in this and will guide you to the best course of action as well as provide support. Concerning the elders that visited, regardless of what we think about the org, that wasn't protocol, and if you want that bullshit to stop dead in its tracks, contact or have someone contact a sharp elder from another congregation, etc. if you want that. These things that are happening to you are not unique to the organization. They happen everywhere a lot. Because of that, there are many resources. Please make use of them. I hope you remain safe and everything works out for the best for you. Upi. I actually went today to the court to file a restraining order, and they gave me a temporary one until the court date where the judge will make it permanent. I also went to the station and asked more info on what was going on. They couldn't tell me much besides that even if I do drop charges, the state is also pressing charges. Apparently they take this stuff really seriously since it was in a child's room. They told me someone would be in contact with me, but I should get a lawyer since it's not recommended to do this alone, as there are many things I won't understand or will need professional advice on. I asked them what they did with the evidence and they told me they have it and cannot release it to anyone since it is now in municipal custody. I am looking into lawyers and made a few consultations for tomorrow. My court date for custody is at the end of November, so I am hoping the other court date for the camera is before, so I can have more evidence that he is not suitable to take custody. Although I feel that just by having those charges pending and him out on bail is enough for the judge to rule me in full custody, as I am now seeking for that as well. We have shared custody, but after this I want full custody. Comment. Wow, go your dad. IMO, your ex is a psychopath and should be locked up immediately. You have a fantastic BF and a good cop. Now listen to these people and get a good lawyer. It looks like the dominoes are all set up to fall upon this creep. Whoopee. I am definitely lawyering up and will keep all charges. The state is also pressing charges, so by the looks of it, he is in deep trouble, which is why the elders are acting the way they are. After the whole child abuse stuff going on, I am sure they don't want an article stating how a JW had a camera installed in his son's bedroom. I also forgot to mention that one of the elders is actually my ex's uncle, which could be another reason for the constant pressure to drop the charges. Comment. This sounds like really strange behavior from the elders. Almost like they have a vested interest in having the charges dropped. Now why might that be? If your ex is going for full custody, he would have sought the assistance of the elders. Maybe the elders suggested he put in a spy camera, or maybe they knew someone who had expertise in this. If the charges aren't dropped, the facts might come out. I don't know if you are awarded, but the organization has a printed guide for JWs involved in custody cases. If the elders are calling your parents, get them to ask the elders whether your ex had specifically admitted to breaking in and installing the spy cam and if there was anyone else involved. When the elders told you that he would be dealt with in the congregation, did they spell out what you would do? Do not drop any charges, especially for the sake of your son. Upi. One of the elders is actually my ex's uncle, which makes it a conflict of interest, although he was part of the committee when I was pregnant and they took away my privileges I had as an unbaptized publisher. If that's the term. Sorry, I went to a Spanish hall and do not know some of the English terms. It seems so weird to me just how much they are pushing and harassing my family. It's almost as if something else is happening that they are afraid of. They told me that they are still going through their process, but that this can lead up to him being reprimanded. What's the term where you are not shunned but you are pointed out as a bad association? Is it censored? Not sure, but he won't get shunned, just a slap on the wrist.